Courtrooms are usually serious places. Judges, lawyers, rules, and order. But sometimes something unexpected happens. Something so shocking, strange, or intense that it ends up making headlines. Today, we're walking through 10 of the craziest courtroom moments of all time. Real moments, real people, real reactions. Some are outrageous, some are emotional, and some are just plain bizarre. But they all really happened. Let's get started. One case out of Ohio in 2023 is hard to forget. A man named David Chiselton was being tried on serious charges, including arson and domestic violence. The courtroom was quiet, just a routine day. Chiselton was in shackles, sitting beside his defense attorney, the very man representing him in court. Then, out of nowhere, Chiselton stood up, turned to his lawyer, and just started attacking him. No warning, no argument, just full-on punches to the face, right in front of the judge, the jury, and the cameras. Security rushed in and tackled him to the ground. His lawyer ended up with injuries, and the whole courtroom was visibly shaken.
That I would come and meet with him privately to see if there was anything we could do to reduce his sentence, but before I could even open my mouth, I just heard a swoosh sound.
And the craziest part? This wasn't just a violent outburst, it was directed at the one person trying to help him. That outburst added more charges to his case and all but sealed his fate. The judge later said it was one of the most disturbing things she'd seen in her courtroom. Now, imagine a courtroom in Florida where the judge himself almost got into a physical fight with a lawyer. This was in 2014, during a very tense moment in a criminal hearing. Judge John Murphy and a public defender got into a verbal exchange that kept escalating. At first, it was just sharp words, then shouting. The judge got so angry that he stood up and said, "Let's go out back."
If you want to fight, let's go out back and I'll just beat your ass.
That wasn't a joke. He literally told the lawyer to go into the hallway for a fight, and they did. Security footage showed both men walking out of the courtroom. Then you hear the sounds of a scuffle, punches being thrown. Nobody could believe it. A judge fighting a lawyer like it's a bar brawl. Later, the judge went on leave and eventually resigned. But that moment stuck with people as one of the most unprofessional and wild scenes ever captured in a courtroom. Another moment that still makes the rounds on the internet happened during the sentencing of a man named Michael Madison in Cleveland. He was convicted of being a serial killer. The courtroom was tense, filled with the families of the victims. As the judge read through the details, emotions in the room started boiling over. And then one of the victim's fathers, Van Terry, stood up to speak. He walked up to the podium, looked the man who murdered his daughter straight in the eye, and then suddenly lunged at him. He tried to grab Madison by the neck, and security tackled him to the ground just before he could reach him. It was heartbreaking, and honestly, it wasn't about violence, it was about a father's pain. He later said he just snapped, couldn't take it anymore. The entire courtroom went silent. No yelling, no movement, just silence. It was a reminder that behind every case, there are real people carrying unimaginable grief. Then there's the case of Ted Bundy, probably one of the most famous serial killers in American history. His trial was already unusual from the start because Bundy insisted on defending himself. He was charming, articulate, and manipulative, which made the trial feel more like a performance than a search for justice. But then, in the middle of the trial, something strange happened. While cross-examining a witness, Bundy suddenly turned to his girlfriend, who was sitting in the courtroom, and proposed to her. Right there in open court. And the wildest part? Because he was representing himself, and because she agreed, it legally counted as a marriage under Florida law at the time. So yes, Ted Bundy got married during his murder trial. It was one of the most surreal moments in legal history. A courtroom full of grief, horror, and evidence. And he turned it into a wedding. In another emotionally intense case, this time in Michigan, a woman was being sentenced for the death of a child. During the hearing, the child's father asked if he could say something. He approached the stand, broke down in tears, and then asked the judge for something unusual: permission to physically confront the defendant. Of course, the judge said no, but it was raw. The father was overwhelmed. In front of the whole court, he asked, "How could you?" Over and over again. It wasn't about drama, it was about pain. That moment was later shown on news stations across the country. Not because it was explosive, but because it was honest. A man begging for answers and not getting them. Courtrooms are full of rules. You don't speak unless spoken to. You don't interrupt. You definitely don't bring your emotions in full display. But in these moments, the rules broke down, and real human reactions came to the surface. Some moments shocked people. Some made them cry. And others just made them ask, what did I just witness? If you thought things couldn't get any stranger, let's talk about a case out of Michigan that was both emotional and downright shocking. During a sentencing hearing in 2018, the judge was about to hand down a sentence to Larry Nassar, the former USA gymnastics doctor who had been convicted of abusing hundreds of young women. The courtroom was packed with victims and their families. One man, Randall Margraves, was the father of 3 daughters who were all victims. When it was his turn to speak, he calmly walked up to the podium, addressed the judge, and then suddenly turned to Nassar and said, "Judge, would you give me 1 minute with this demon in a locked room?"
To grant me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon.
Before anyone could react, he lunged straight at Nassar, trying to attack him. Court officers immediately tackled him. The whole courtroom gasped. And honestly, many people watching at home understood where that anger was coming from. The judge handled it calmly, and later Margraves even apologized, saying he just lost control in the moment. But it was yet another reminder that in court, people carry more than just arguments. They carry deep, emotional pain. Then there was the man in Georgia who decided to try something you'd expect to see in a movie. His name was Denver Fenton Allen. He was in court for a murder charge, but what happened in the courtroom that day had nothing to do with the actual crime. As soon as the judge began speaking, Allen interrupted him, again and again. He cursed, yelled, insulted the judge personally, and just completely lost it. The judge tried to stay calm at first, but eventually the whole thing turned into a bizarre back-and-forth shouting match that went on for several minutes. Allen accused the judge of everything from racism to conspiracies. The judge finally gave up, ended the hearing, and had Allen dragged out of the room. The whole exchange was caught on camera and later circulated online because of just how out of control it was. Some people thought Allen was trying to fake insanity. Others believed it was just a man unraveling under pressure. Either way, it was one of the wildest and most chaotic court hearings ever recorded. And sometimes it's not the defendant that shocks the courtroom. It's the connection between the judge and the accused. In one case out of Florida, a man named Arthur Booth was being charged with burglary. As the judge began looking over the paperwork and realized who he was, she suddenly stopped, looked up at him, and said, "Oh my goodness, Arthur?"
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry to see you there. I always wondered what happened to you, sir.
There was a pause, and then she added, "This is the nicest kid in middle school. I used to play with you."
He was the best kid in middle school. I used to play football with him, with all the kids.
Booth, hearing this, immediately broke down in tears. You could see it hit him, that moment of realization, that the judge sitting above him now in a robe used to be his classmate. And she remembered him as a sweet, kind kid. It was heartbreaking. The judge told him she was sorry to see him in that situation and hoped he could turn his life around.
Good luck to you, sir. I hope you're able to come out of this okay and just lead a lawful life.
The video of that moment was shared millions of times, and for good reason. It wasn't about punishment. It was a glimpse of human connection in a place where it's usually just about crime and consequences. Then, in another strange moment, a defendant, clearly frustrated, threw a shoe at the judge. Yes, a shoe. This happened in a Detroit courtroom. The woman had just received a sentence she didn't agree with, and as the judge was wrapping up the session, she kicked off one of her shoes and launched it straight at the bench.
Yes, I am. This is crazy. I don't deserve this.
The judge ducked, the shoe hit the wall, and security was on her immediately. She was already being sentenced for assault, so throwing a shoe at the judge just added more time to her record. Some people watching thought it was ridiculous. Others said it showed how powerless she felt in that moment. Either way, it's not something you see every day in a court of law. In another truly bizarre case, a man on trial decided to fake a mental breakdown? Badly. This happened in New York. He began acting confused, mumbling nonsense, rolling his eyes and rocking back and forth in his chair. At first, people thought maybe he was having a genuine mental health episode. But the moment the judge called for a recess, he immediately stood up straight, walked normally, and spoke clearly to his attorney. It was caught on camera, and everyone in the room knew right away. He had been faking it. The prosecution brought it up later as a sign of guilt and manipulation. And any sympathy he might have been getting? Gone in an instant. Now, not all courtroom moments are loud or violent. Some are just awkward. Like the time when a woman came in to fight a traffic ticket, and instead of arguing her case, she started hitting on the judge. She complimented his voice, his robe, even called him cute.
How are you?
You come here to check my health?
I'm just asking how you are.
I don't know. How do you think I am?
You look good. You look wonderful.
The judge tried to remain professional, but you could tell he was caught off guard. The court clerk was trying not to laugh. Eventually, the woman realized she wasn't getting out of the fine and just shrugged and said, "Worth a shot." That moment actually lightened the room, and even the judge cracked a smile. Sometimes courtrooms bring out the worst in people, but occasionally they show something deeper. Real human moments. Sadness, regret, anger, confusion, even laughter. One of the most heartbreaking stories came from a man sentenced to life for a crime he didn't commit. It wasn't until years later that DNA evidence cleared him. When he finally stood in the courtroom to hear his exoneration, the judge said, "You are free to go." He didn't cheer. He didn't cry. He just stood there, completely still, before collapsing into the arms of his lawyer. That moment didn't go viral because it was wild. It went viral because it was real. So, after looking back at these real courtroom moments, from surprise attacks to emotional breakdowns, fake insanity, old classmates reuniting under painful circumstances, and even someone getting married during a murder trial, you start to realize just how unpredictable real life can be. Because at the end of the day, a courtroom is more than just wood-paneled walls, legal arguments, and rules. It's where real people meet the system, where grief, anger, fear, and even hope all crash together in one place. We often think of court as cold and logical, facts, laws, evidence, verdicts. But when people walk into that room, they don't leave their emotions at the door. Whether it's a father lunging toward the man who hurt his daughter, or a judge recognizing a defendant as a kid he once played with, those moments stick with us because they're human. And it's worth remembering, justice is complicated. It doesn't always look clean or controlled. Sometimes it comes with tears, with rage, with silence, or even a flying shoe. It may be shocking or even funny in the moment, but behind every wild headline is a story with real pain, real mistakes, and real consequences. Some of these moments made us laugh. Others made us uncomfortable. A few were almost impossible to watch. But they all remind us that in a world of rules and order, there are still moments that no one can script, where everything just breaks through. So the next time you hear about a trial or see a courtroom scene on the news, just remember, what looks like just another legal case might have something much deeper happening inside it. Behind the bench, behind the robe, behind the cameras, there's always more to the story. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories from inside the courtroom and beyond.